When they were children, they would run and play. But as they got older, things changed.
This is where we need to focus our efforts, especially with the current market trends.
So we had to make a decision, do we continue on this path or do we pivot?
This issue of overpopulation is the most serious challenge facing our nation right now. It impacts every aspect of our lives, from resources to infrastructure.
This is the initial plan we discussed, but I have a few suggestions for improvement.
Okay, I'm listening. Show me what you've got.
So what are your thoughts on this new project proposal?
I think it has a lot of potential, but we need to refine the timeline.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think we have to learn and just enjoy the process itself.
So tell me more about this opportunity.
Well, as I was saying, it's a chance to really make a difference.
I think for me, the most important thing is to be able to help others, especially those who are less fortunate.
The afternoon air was thick, heavy with the kind of silence that seemed to weigh on the chest. He walked slowly up the narrow road, his steps deliberate, each one fueled by a storm inside him. In his hand was a folded paper, creased from being clutched too tightly, its ink smudged slightly from sweat. It was not just paper, not just words. It was proof, cold and undeniable, the confirmation of a truth he had carried in his heart his entire life. 99.9%, father and son. The numbers burned in his mind like fire. And yet, beneath that fire, a cold fear whispered, what if the man refused to see it, refused to see him? He stopped at the gate of the house, staring at the wooden door that seemed at once ordinary and insurmountable. For years he had imagined this moment, the confrontation, the reunion, the fragile chance of having something he had been denied since childhood, a father, a man to lean on, to ask questions of, to share burdens with. He swallowed hard, his throat dry, and forced his hand to knock. The sound echoed hollow against the wood, louder than he intended, his heart leaping as if the door itself might reject him. At last, the door creaked open. The man stood there, older now, his hair streaked with gray, his face weathered with time. His eyes narrowed at the sight of him, suspicion clouding them. For a moment, silence stretched between them, a silence filled with all the words unspoken for decades. Then the young man held out the paper, his voice trembling. "Uncle," he said softly, though the word lodged bitter in his throat. "I've come to you because I have something you must see." The older man frowned, reluctant, but took the paper. His eyes flicked across the lines, the official stamp, the cold declaration of blood. 99.9%. Father and son. His hand trembled slightly, but when he looked up, his face was hard. "This is not true," he said flatly, his voice like stone. The young man's chest tightened. "Look again," he pleaded. "It's clear. The test proves it. You are my father." But the man shook his head, his mouth curling in denial. "No, you faked this. You think I don't know? These days, anyone with money can buy a paper like this. You forged it. It's not real." The words sliced through him like a blade. He staggered back a step, disbelief flooding him. "Fake? How could I fake this? The sample was yours. My wife went to your house, she took your toothbrush, and we sent it for testing. This is the result." The man's eyes narrowed, his voice rising with anger. "A toothbrush? You think a toothbrush can prove blood? If it is not blood, if it is not hair, it is worthless. You tricked them. You tricked yourself. I am not your father. How many times must I say it? We are not father and son." The young man's hand shook as he reached forward, pointing at the words, the stamp, the science that refused to lie. "It's here, in black and white. You can deny me, but you cannot deny the truth. 99.9%. What more do you need?" But the man only pushed the paper back into his chest. "I don't believe it. I don't care what it says. You are not my son. Do not come here again with this nonsense." Something inside him broke. For years, he had wondered who he was, where he came from, what it meant to belong. Now he stood here with the truth in his hands, only to have it crushed under the weight of denial. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Do you know what it was like? Growing up without a father? Watching other children run into their father's arms while I stood alone? Do you know how many nights I lay awake, wishing for you, for anyone, to be there? And now, when the truth is clear, you throw it away as if I am nothing?" The older man's face tightened, but he said nothing. Silence fell again, heavy, suffocating. The young man's eyes burned with tears. He refused to let fall. He clenched the paper to his chest and stepped back. "Fine," he said, his voice shaking with rage and sorrow. "If you deny me now, remember this. One day, if you come to me, if you wish to call me your son, I will not accept you. I will turn you away just as you have turned me today. Don't regret it when that day comes." Without another word, he turned and walked away, his steps heavy, his chest aching as though the world had caved in. The man watched him go, his jaw tight, his eyes hard, but deep inside, something flickered, a shadow of recognition, of memory, of guilt. Yet he stood still, frozen in his pride, unwilling to reach out. The young man did not stop until he reached his mother's house. The familiar sight of her waiting on the porch made his chest constrict, the burden he carried threatening to crush him. She looked up, her eyes searching his face, and in an instant she knew. He sank down beside her, his voice breaking as he told her everything: the paper, the denial, the cruel dismissal. His mother's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was firm. "He is your father," she said quietly. "I know it, and one day he will know it too. Do not lose hope. Sometimes the heart needs time to accept what the mind already knows." He shook his head, despair weighing him down. "But why, Mother? Why deny what is so clear? Does he hate me so much? Does he hate you?" She touched his hand, her palm warm against his trembling fingers. "Your father carries his own scars, his own fears. I cannot tell you why he hides from the truth, but I know this: blood cannot be erased. You are his son, no matter what he says. One day, he will have no choice but to see it." He wanted to believe her, but the wound was too raw, too deep. He lowered his head, tears slipping silently down his face. "All my life I wanted a father," he whispered. "And when I finally find him, he pushes me away. How do I keep hoping, Mother? How do I keep believing?" She held him close, her voice a whisper in his ear. "Because hope is all we have. Without it, we are lost." And so the night fell heavy around them, the truth hanging between them like a fragile thread, a son who had found his father, and a father who refused to see, a truth that could not be denied and yet was, and beneath it all, a storm gathering, waiting for the day when denial would shatter and the past could no longer be hidden. The night felt endless. Even after leaving his mother's arms, he could not silence the echo of his father's words. They cut through him like shards of broken glass, replaying in his mind with cruel clarity. "You are not my son." The sentence rang louder than the numbers on the paper he had carried, louder than the truth written in black ink. No matter how hard he tried, he could not silence it. When he stepped through the door of his own home, the weight of it pressed down harder. The familiar scent of rice simmering in the pot should have been comforting, but instead it made his chest tighten, the ordinariness of the moment clashing against the chaos inside him. His wife looked up from the table, her eyes soft, searching his face immediately for answers. She had been waiting. She always waited, her patience stretching farther than his pain deserved. He tried to smile, but the effort cracked at the edges. She rose from her chair, crossing the room in silence, and took his hands. "Tell me," she whispered, her voice carrying both fear and tenderness. For a moment, he could not speak. The words lodged in his throat, trapped by the shame of rejection. But when her thumb brushed against his knuckles, steadying him, the dam broke. His voice trembled as he told her everything, how the old man had looked at him with cold eyes, how he had thrown the paper back as if it were filth, how he had denied him again and again, each denial a dagger twisting deeper. He said the paper was fake, he whispered, staring down at the floor. He said a toothbrush isn't proof. He said I am not his son. Even with the truth in front of him, he still pushed me away. His wife's breath caught, her grip on his hands tightening. For a moment she said nothing, as though words themselves would fail against the cruelty of it. Then she lifted his chin, forcing his eyes to meet hers. "The paper is not fake," she said firmly. "The truth does not change because someone refuses to see it. He may deny you now, but that does not erase who you are." The warmth in her eyes nearly undid him. He collapsed against her, his forehead pressed to her shoulder, his body shaking with the sobs he had refused to release in front of his mother. She held him tightly, her arms a shield against the world, her voice whispering words he barely heard but felt deep in his bones. "I've spent my whole life wondering who I am," he murmured between breaths. "And now that I've found him, he tells me I'm nothing. How do I live with that? How do I walk knowing my own father despises me?" She stroked his hair gently, her heart breaking with every word. "You are not nothing," she said softly. "You are my husband. You are a son to your mother. You are a man who carries truth inside him, no matter who denies it. He cannot take that from you. No one can." He pulled back slightly, his eyes red, his face drawn with exhaustion. "But what if he never accepts me? What if I live my whole life carrying his rejection?" Her gaze did not waver. "Then you build a life without him. You build it with me, with your mother, with the family we will have. He may choose to close his heart, but we will not. You don't need his acceptance to know your worth, and one day, when he is ready, he will see what he has lost." Her words settled over him like a fragile blanket, not erasing the pain, but softening its edges. He wanted to believe her, wanted to let her certainty become his own. Slowly, he nodded, though doubt still clung to him like a shadow. The pot on the stove hissed, steam rising, filling the silence. She guided him to the table, placing a bowl before him, urging him to eat. He resisted at first, his stomach knotted with grief, but at last he lifted the spoon. The food was warm, grounding, the taste of home pressing against the bitterness of the day. As they ate, he spoke again, his voice quieter, filled with weary resignation. He said, "I made it up, that I forged the paper." He laughed at the idea that a toothbrush could hold the truth, as if science itself could be a lie. His wife reached across the table, her hand finding his. "You know it isn't a lie, and so does he. Denial is not ignorance, it is fear. He is afraid of what it means to accept you, afraid of what it will change. But fear cannot bury truth forever. One day, it will rise, and he will have to face it." The conviction in her voice eased him slightly, though the wound still bled. He squeezed her hand in return, whispering, "Then until that day, I will hold on to you. You are the only thing that makes this bearable." Her smile was soft, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "And I will hold on to you, always." They finished their meal in silence, the storm inside him quieter, but not gone. Outside, the night deepened, stars hidden by heavy clouds, the air thick with the promise of rain. He knew the battle was not over. The paper in his pocket still burned like fire, its truth undeniable, its rejection unbearable. But as he sat beside his wife, her hand warm in his, he realized that perhaps he did not need his father's acceptance to survive. Perhaps love, the kind that stayed when everything else fell apart, was enough to carry him through the storm. Yet in the corner of his mind, a thought lingered, cold and sharp. If his father would not accept him now, what would it take? What storm would have to come before the truth could no longer be denied? The days that followed moved slowly, each one pressing against the young man with a weight he could hardly bear. Though he returned to work, his hands felt clumsy, his thoughts distracted, his heart heavy. Every moment of silence pulled him back to that small living room, to the sight of the old man's face twisting in denial, to the cruel echo of words he could not forget. At night, sleep brought no relief. He would lie beside his wife, staring at the ceiling, the darkness whispering doubts into his ears. Sometimes he would dream of his childhood, of moments when he watched other children holding their father's hands, their laughter ringing bright. He would wake with wet cheeks, his chest aching, as if the boy he once was had reached out from the past, demanding answers he could not give. His wife noticed. She always did. She tried to pull him into lighter moments, cooking meals together, talking about plans for the future, teasing him about the names they might one day give their children. But though he smiled, his eyes betrayed the storm that raged within. She never pressed too hard, never scolded, only stayed, holding him through every silence, her love a steady flame against the darkness. His mother, too, tried to comfort him. She came by often carrying food, fussing over small things, as if domestic care could mend the hole in his chest. One evening, as she folded laundry in his living room, she spoke quietly, her hands busy, her eyes downcast. "He will come around," she murmured. "Your father has always been proud, too proud, but the truth is stubborn. It will outlive his pride. Give him time." He wanted to believe her, but frustration boiled up. "Time?" he snapped, harsher than he meant. "I've already given him a lifetime. All those years I grew up without him, all the nights I wished for someone to tell me I wasn't alone. And now, when I finally find him, he spits in my face. How much more time must I give?" His mother stilled, her hands frozen in the fabric she held. Slowly, she lifted her eyes to him, and in them he saw something. A shadow, a flicker of guilt. It unsettled him. "What aren't you telling me?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. She hesitated. For a moment, he thought she might retreat, swallow the truth as she had swallowed so much already. But then her shoulders sagged, her eyes filling with tears. "He knew," she whispered. "Your father knew about you all those years ago. But he made a choice. He chose not to be part of your life. I thought, if I kept it from you, it would hurt less. But maybe I only made it worse." The words struck him like lightning. His knees nearly buckled, rage and grief colliding inside him. "He knew," he choked out. "All this time he knew, and he still abandoned me." His mother's tears spilled over. He was weak, afraid. He thought he had too much to lose. "But I never stopped loving you, never stopped fighting for you." The young man turned away, his chest heaving, fists clenched. He wanted to scream, to break something, to run until the pain burned away. But instead, he stood frozen, trembling under the weight of betrayal layered upon betrayal. That night, he told his wife what his mother had revealed. She listened quietly, her face pale but calm. When he finished, she reached for him, her voice steady. "Then he is not just in denial. He is a coward. He ran from responsibility, and now he hides behind lies. But you are not him. You are stronger. Don't let his weakness define you." Her words gave him strength, but also fueled his resolve. He could no longer wait. He could no longer let time bleed him dry. He would confront the man again, force him to see, to acknowledge, to face the truth he had buried for decades. A week later, he returned to the old man's house. The sky was heavy with storm clouds, the air charged, mirroring the fury inside him. He knocked hard, each pound of his fist echoing his heartbeat. When the door creaked open, the old man stood there, eyes narrowing. "You again," the man muttered, his tone dismissive. "Yes, me again," the son spat, stepping inside without invitation. His hands shook, but his voice was sharp, cutting. "I know the truth now. I know you knew about me, and still you left me to grow up without a father. You don't get to hide behind denial anymore. I won't let you." The old man's face hardened, but something flickered in his eyes. A crack, a tremor. "Your mother talks too much," he growled. "She talks just enough," the son snapped. "Enough for me to see you for what you are, a coward, a man too weak to own his mistakes. Do you have any idea what your absence did to me? Do you have any idea how many nights I cried, wondering why I wasn't enough?" The storm outside broke, thunder rolling, rain lashing against the windows. The old man flinched, his shoulders stiff, his jaw tight. For a long moment, silence hung heavy. Then, in a voice that was almost a whisper, he said, "I didn't think I could be a father. I was afraid of the burden, afraid of what people would say, afraid of failing." The son's chest heaved, anger and sorrow colliding. "So you failed me before even trying. You failed me for 20 years, and now you want to hide behind fear?" The old man's eyes glistened, though no tears fell. He looked away, his voice cracking. "I see you now, and I see what I've done. But it's too late, isn't it? Too late to undo the years." The son's heart pounded. He wanted to scream that yes, it was too late, that nothing could erase the scars. But looking at the frail figure before him, he saw not just a coward, but a man shackled by his own regrets. Slowly, painfully, he realized the choice lay not with the father, but with himself. "You're right," he said at last, his voice steady though his hands trembled. "It is too late to give me the childhood I lost, but it's not too late to tell the truth, not too late to admit who I am, not for me, but for you. Because if you die with this lie, it will bury you deeper than any grave." The old man's face crumpled, his defenses collapsing like walls under fire. At last, he whispered, "You are my son." The words hung in the air, fragile, broken, but real. The young man's breath caught, his chest tightening with a storm of emotions, rage, relief, grief, and something he could not yet name. Tears spilled freely, hot and relentless, as the old man bowed his head, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The storm outside raged on, but inside the room, a different storm broke. A storm of truth, of pain laid bare, of hearts cracking open after decades of silence. The son did not know if forgiveness would come, or when, or how. The wounds were deep, and scars would remain. But for the first time, he no longer carried the weight of denial alone. The truth was spoken. The chains were broken. As he left the house, rain washing over him, his wife waiting at the edge of the road, he felt both hollow and whole. The journey was far from over, the road ahead uncertain. But at last, he had faced the storm. At last, the silence had ended. And in that fragile space between pain and healing, between loss and possibility, he took his first breath of freedom.